Hello there, and you're very welcome to the Arkham Avengers Podcast. You join me, the host, along with Eamon, Hector, and Captain Fantastical Mick. Join us for some chat about football, crack, bold opinions, and a touch of chaos. From drama to questionable decisions, there's something here for everyone. So sit back, stay tuned, and enjoy the show. Well, thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope you're keeping well wherever you are in the world, and today we're going to continue our look at the managers, the rise and fall throughout the season, and their transfer activity. We'll also be taking a look at the World Cup. Eamon, Mick, thanks for being on the show with us today.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh, very nice to be here with you guys. It's the highlight of my week, actually, to come into the studio and sit there and have a wee little chat with you all day. Can I give a little shout out to Hector, though? I know he was on the phone earlier on and he's sorry that he can't be here. Hector, hope you're keeping well down there and you're going to enjoy Brazil when they're playing in the World Cup. I just wonder if I can say something else here.
By all means, Mick, by all means, the floor is yours.
I was looking through some of the correspondence that we received, and this one came in. Now, the sender hasn't identified themselves, but looks like they're having a pop shot at, I think it looks like their husband.
Okay, do you want to read that out for us?
Okay, well, it's very short here. It's about this guy. Give a shout out to Damo, who's still in the Doghouse. And he's in there because he's watched the Britain's Got Talent final while the rest of the family were away. I think it's a little bit sneaky of Damo.
I think that's unbelievable behaviour, if you ask me. And hello to all our listeners, by the way. If he's not watching Britain's Got Talent with his family and then thinks he's got to get away with this, I mean, he's in cloud cuckoo land. I mean, did he think nobody was going to find out afterwards here?
From what I understand, Eamon, everything was going smoothly until the next day. A family were having a little chat about it because they're all going to sit down and watch it. This is what I'm reading in the note. And he mentioned something about one of the finalists. So at that point, the cat's out of the bag.
Oh, look, that's pure amateur stuff. I mean, that's akin to AFC Telani taking a minus 12-point hit on transfers and then accidentally screenshotting this and sending it in a group chat. So, come on, where is this guy going?
I think, Eamon, to be fair, sometimes curiosity gets the better of people. Man hears about a magician. He hears maybe something about a choir or a dancing dog. They're all part of the final. Next thing you know, he's emotionally involved in the show.
Mick, if I didn't know better, I'd say you sound suspiciously understanding of this situation, that you understand his need to go and watch it on his own.
Well, I just don't think anyone should be judged for enjoying a bit of light entertainment. That's what it is.
And now listen, where do you actually think you're going with this? Let's be honest. There's something slightly reckless about sitting down to watch Britain's Got Talent final while your family is away, when you're supposed to be watching it the next day. There's no witness, there's no accountability. Just this guy, Donald, with his remote control, sitting down for 2 hours watching secret TV.
It's Damo.
Sorry, what?
You called him Donald, Eamon. His name is actually Damo. That's my understanding, isn't it, Mick? That's right, it's Damo.
Well, look, Damo, Donald, what's the difference? They're still going ahead and going to do their own thing.
I understand he's still in the Doghouse, so, that's some punishment. But Britain's Got Talent, that finals, what is it? It's over 2 weeks, is it now? I think we have to let things go.
Did you watch it?
Me? I may have briefly observed one or two of the performances. Happened to be walking by the TV when it was on.
Briefly, did you say? Briefly? Hold on. You text me about a magician, the choir, a comedian, and a fire juggling act. So that's not brief.
Well, maybe I passed the TV a couple of times, okay, but I didn't sit down for 2 hours watching it, that's funny.
Well, listen, while we've been talking here, we've actually got another note that's come in from T, who writes, strangely enough, every time Alicia Dixon appeared on screen, Damo suddenly became very interested in the judging panel. We're getting closer to the truth here now. The BGT final wasn't the real attraction by the sounds of things. This guy is tuning in to watch Alicia Dixon.
Well, to be fair, Alicia, she's very charismatic, so she is.
Mick, you're defending him too quickly for my liking. This is starting to sound less like commentary and more like witness protection. And can I say, suddenly somewhere, A family returns home, wondering why the television recommendations are full of jugglers, dance acts, and Alicia Dixon interviews. He says this guy is going to be out of the doghouse too easy. His toughest conversation here now will be trying to explain why Britain's Got Talent final mysteriously appeared in the recently watched list. And he's got no evidence. He's got no out on that there.
Maybe we should start an online petition. What do you think, lads? Help this guy. Help Damo.
What? An online petition? I mean, seriously, where are you going with this now? This fellow has watched the programme while his family away. Okay, that's the big X there. He didn't expose any corruption at international level. He hasn't found any mastermind criminals. What are you going to call this petition? Justice for Damo and the Alicia Dixon Appreciation Society?
I just think he deserves a little bit of support at this time. The guy's under pressure, so he is.
Well, I don't know what's coming next here.
Now that you mention, I happened to talk to a guy called Michael up the road the other day, and he was talking about home security and lights. Maybe our listeners would be interested in a little segment on this.
Okay. Let's just pause for a moment here before this turns into some kind of official tribunal on Damo's rights to watch BGT finals. And Mick, if you and Michael want to talk about home security and lighting and all of that sort of stuff, go and find yourself another podcast, because it's not coming on this show here, okay? Can we get back to our football managers? On the last show, we stopped at Silverstone, who were in 6th position. We're going to take a look now at our top 5 managers. In 5th place, we have Raglan Road, and they got a total of 2,074 points. That's 313 points lower than last year. When you look at this table, it's fair to say this manager had a tough start to the season, because out of the top 10 game weeks, they had 6 weeks with red arrows. So they weren't rising there. And it was a bit of a mixed bag of rising and falling until it came to game week 18, when they managed to put a run of 6 game weeks when they were on the rise. So it's all green arrows on the way there. And then they had a blip from game week 24 up to 25, followed with another 7 game weeks from game weeks 26 when they were on the rise. But unfortunately, that's where the good run ended. They weren't able to build on that, and they couldn't break into the top 3. So they were undone, especially in the final 4 game weeks when it was all red arrows. That's where you expect lads to see the green arrows. When it came to the transfers, this manager had 35 in total, and they didn't lose any points. So overall, they had 20 weeks with green arrows and 17 where they were in the red. Eamon, you're going to talk to us next about Tanaka and Net. Yes, this manager scored 2,101 points, and that's 206 points higher than last season. So we're already seeing this manager was applying themselves, improving the situation, and certainly it marked a big improvement on their finishing in previous years. When I look at their game week progress, the problem is they never put a decent run of green arrows to rise every week there. You're talking 2 to 3 game weeks where they'd be on the rise, followed by 2 to 3 game weeks where their red arrows are falling. So they were going up and they were going down there. From game week 14 to 19, they had a run of 6 weeks where they were on the fall there. That's the nature of their season. It was rise a bit, fall a bit, rise a bit, fall a bit. They just didn't have the consistency. And throughout the season, they made 33 transfers, and that cost them -8 points. It's not going to break the bank, but as I said, they were undone by not being able to get that consistent run. So I think the manager here is lucky in some respects, because if a few of your other managers there, the Silverstone, Blightsome squad, if they had upped their game, it's likely that this manager probably would have ended up out of the top 5. Probably a 6th place, maybe a 7th place finish there. But he wasn't sleeping, others might have been, and he went for it. The question is, what is he going to do for next season? Will he be able to replicate this? Will he be able to build on finishing in 4th place? Or is this as good as it gets? I don't know, but look, they had 17 weeks with green arrows and they had 20 weeks with red arrows on the drop. There's a little bit of reflection there for this manager. And Mick, you're going to talk to us now about the manager in 3rd position.
That's right. Well, we're talking about none other than Toe Buggers, one of our champion managers from yesteryear at this point. They scored a respectable 2,149 points, and that's 149 points lower than what they achieved in 2024-2025. So I think this manager is going to look at that figure and think, I've got to improve. Where did I fall down? A bit like some of the other managers here, their start to the season was very, very mixed. So it was a combination of red arrows and green arrows, and I liken it to, they were stuttering and starting quite a bit there. And it took until game week 24 when they managed to put a run of 7 game weeks with their green arrows. And then managed to follow that up then with game week 32 to game week 35 with more green arrows. Overall though, I see it as a very topsy-turvy season for them there. You never quite got to see how good they can be or how good they have been. There's something missing there, and there was something missing last season, I think, as well. They made a total of 42 transfers and they lost 20 points as a result of that there. They had 20 game weeks with green arrows and 17 game weeks with red arrows. You could say it's a return to form. You could argue that, or yeah, you could do that, alright. But a bit like Tanaka, isn't it? It's a bit early to say whether we're going to see them build on this.
And Mick, I'll come back to you now just for your reviews and your thoughts on the manager who finished in second place. Eamon, I will be back to you. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of opportunity to talk.
I don't mind. I'll just sit here and have a drink of my tea while listening to this guy waffle on.
Man, I mean, I always talk man common sense here, so do, you know, as practical as he's, man.
Look, just get on with it, will you?
Okay, second place manager, yeah. Okay, this is Lafayette Lions. So they pulled in a whopping 2,182 points. Yeah, that's 2,182 points, folks. They finished in second place, so they did. That total was still 202 points lower than what they got last season. From game week 2 to game week 10, they had 6 weeks where they were on the rise. So that's green arrows all the way. And they followed that from game week 13 to 16 with another 4 weeks. And yet again then, from game week 19 to 22, another 4 weeks with green arrows. And from game week 26 to 34, they had 9 game weeks where they were on the rise here. And they've actually finished off the season, you know, game week 37 and 38, green arrows there. So they've had a pretty strong season here. You know, they were contenders, if you ask me. They had 25 game weeks with green arrows and 12 game weeks with red arrows there. They made 45 transfers, lost 32 points. This manager has tried to do things a little differently. It's interesting, and perhaps maybe we might have a look at this at some point. How all the managers were lower points than last season?
Well, if I can, before you go too far in that, I think this all just comes down to last season people had Haaland, and Haaland played out of his skin. It was brilliantly playing. So did Salah. And this season, those guys didn't really step up to the mark. And I think managers, not only in this league, but I think across the whole of the fantasy football league, probably was struggling to get the player who's going to get you the big points. That probably, I think if you look at this overall, a lot of these managers and a lot of these players are all down.
It's an interesting point, Eamon, to make there. So it's really, without the big hitters, you're kind of looking for that unique player who could get you the extra point.
That's right, yes. Now, the Donkey Fernandez, as I call him, Bruno, he done very well, and he would have been a contender to be consistent captain, and I think some of these managers probably opted for him there. But yeah, you are looking for some fringe players who are going to play really well there.
Okay, so that's Lafayette Lions. You're finished, Mick? Nothing else then?
No, I've nothing else to add there. It'll be very interesting that after last year's collapse and after this year's rise, where are they at a balance now? Will they decide, look, I can take first place and I can win this? I wouldn't be surprised with this now, because as Eamon said, he was surprised that Lafayette Lions came back.
You could be onto something there now, Mick. Do you think the confidence is building with this manager, do you?
I do think so, yeah. I think confidence is with him, and I think he'll carry that into the summertime. Yeah, last season could have knocked him out big time. That's what you were saying, Eamon. You felt it could have been a real humdinger, couldn't it?
Well, yeah, look, if you are winning and then you drop down like that, it's the psychological side of things. I think this season, the psychological side is that Lafayette are in second place, and managers who should have been doing better are not. So they do have a psychological edge, and football is psychological at times.
Finally, we're going to take a look at our champion, Arkham Avengers. They finished the season with 2,279 points. That's 151 points lower than their total for the 24-25 season. When you're looking at their table, they didn't really have a stunning start, because they had 4 green arrows with game weeks on the rise, followed by 5 on the drop. They're a bit out there all over the place. And game week 11 to game week 20 saw some improvement, because they managed to put 7 game weeks in a row. And then this was followed by 3 game weeks where they were on the fall. And the next few game weeks were more of the same, rising a bit, dropping a bit. Game week 28 to 34, they had 7 game weeks where they were on the rise. And then from game week 36 to 37, they had another 2 weeks on the rise. And that seems to have given them the push to get over the line. Although game week 38, they were on the drop on that week there. So this manager had 24 game weeks with 13 arrows, and that they were on the rise, and 13 game weeks where they were on the drop. When you look at their transfer activity, this is very interesting. They had a total of 50 transfers, which cost them minus 56 points.
That's very interesting, so
Oh, that's a lot of points to lose, though, so it is.
But when we're taking a look at their activity here, who spent the season pressing the transfer button? Eamon, I'll go to you first on this.
I'll say who was pressing the transfer button. I would probably say who was repeatedly punching it at this point. Take the spoofer, for example. 50 transfers. I mean, that's not squad management. That's a manager standing in the middle of a supermarket and he's changing a shopping trolley every 5 minutes. I mean, it gives all the appearance of when he looked and saw that a player blanked, there'd been emergency action had to be taken on this day. I mean, 50 transfers to me says there was absolutely no trust in if they had a plan. Certainly there was no trust in it, and losing 56 points, that's a heck of a lot, so it is.
There's another side to this. Perhaps this shows a manager who was actively engaged every week. One thing for certain, lad, we have to say, you can't accuse the manager of just sitting on their hands. I mean, every transfer represents hope, ambition, and a belief that next week would finally be the week that everything turns around.
Well, by transfer number 47, I'd say hope has left the building and was actively looking for alternative accommodation.
But sure, Lafayette Lions wasn't too far behind them. They had 45 transfers and they lost 32 points.
I have to say, I admire the consistency because every time there was a small issue here, it looks like Lafayette Lions responded by changing 3 players. That seems to have been their approach there. The transfer market must have seen this manager's name appear and think Christmas has come early because of all of the activity there. Okay, they got into second place, but is there a cost to all of this? You do transfers to try and improve matters, but you're not doing transfers to say, I'm going to just throw points down the drain.
I don't see it that way, Eamon.
Well, you wouldn't see it that way, Mick. You'd probably see this as rosy, all is fine.
No, I don't. I think the Lions, they were consistently searching, I think, for improvement. Now, whether they actually found it is another discussion entirely. But there's something admirable about refusing to accept mediocrity.
Well, look, you can say that, but there's also something admirable about occasionally leaving the team alone for a game week, Mick, and not going near it and see what happens. Put a bit of faith in your team, isn't there?
Oh, you could say that as well, but that's up to the manager, isn't it?
Okay, well, we'll take a look at Toboggers, and they had 42 transfers, and that cost them minus 20 points.
Well, I looked at this manager's transfer activity, and it feels as though they started out sensible and then slowly drifted into transfer addiction. It wasn't reckless enough to top the charts, but they were certainly active enough to keep the transfer panic button well polished. And it's surprising from this manager here.
Eamon, that's like you saying that, it's controlled aggression. Their transfer activity was high, but the points damage remained and, relatively contained, so that they're not really too worried about that. You do know that it's actually quite difficult to achieve that.
I'm sorry, controlled aggression. I do like that. It sounds much better than slightly panicked and not completely out of control.
Moving over now to take a look at Tanaka the Net. As we've already said, they made 33 transfers, which cost them only minus 8 points.
I think if they had a couple of more game weeks, I feel they could have finished in the top 3. I'll take this from these guys there.
This is a manager who understands restraint. A manager who looks before they leap. They probably sleep well on a Friday night instead of looking at injury reports every 12 minutes to see is there a guy or a player they need to get out there.
So you actually admire them, Eamon, and think they've done a good job?
Well, they didn't do the worst job. They didn't. Put it like this, their transfer button wasn't polished and shining like a beacon in the middle of the night.
And then we have a look at Raglan Road, and they made 35 transfers. Now, they didn't lose any points with their transfer activity there.
Yeah, well, when you hear that, it sounds as though we're entering the professional territory here. 35 transfers without losing a point. It's like driving through Dublin city centre without hitting any red lights there. Fair play to this manager. Could they have done maybe an extra 1 or 2 transfers? What's the quality of their transfers? That's really what we need to be looking at here, to analyse the quality of the players that they're putting out and bringing in.
When I looked at that, I thought to myself, this must be one of the most disciplined managers in the league. There's no sense of panic about it. There's no sense of drama about it. No unnecessary risk, just steady decision making.
Hey, Mick, I'm listening to that, and it's funny how you admire discipline in other managers while you show absolutely none for yourself.
Hey man, I think you should take that back, Eamon. I don't like the sound of that.
Well, I don't think I'm going to take it back, so I'm not there.
Well, I think you should. It's not nice, I'm trying to give my objectiveness, my analysis here, and you want to pop with me there.
And look, that's just the nature of the beast. Mick, you don't like it, you can always go there.
Okay, hold on a moment now. Hold on. Eamon, you might just tone it down ever so slightly there.
Okay, look, that's all right, Mick, sorry about that. Won't happen again there.
Right, we'll get back to the managers here instead of your in-house spat there. Silver Stroke had 37 transfers. Now, they didn't lose any points either here.
Now, Silver Stroke for me, I'm a bit disappointed in them this season. They were good last season. I expected more from them here, and their sort of activity and where they ended up. I suspect this manager was probably distracted. They're probably making plans for Christmas shopping in August instead of thinking about the fantasy football here. Everything appears organised. Everything appears considered. Frankly, I don't trust anybody this calm. They should have been a bit more proactive, and there should have been a bit more bite out of them, especially when they done so well last season. They're like a little balloon now. The air's gone out of them here now.
Well, again, I've got to disagree with you, Eamon, here. I think Silver Stroke, they allowed free transfers to do the work rather than consistently chasing short-term solutions. This is textbook squad management.
And this comes from you, as though you're the one that wrote the textbook. Like, I can't believe I'm actually hearing this from you.
That's the way I see it, Eamon, and I've got my point of view.
And next up then, of course, is Wirtz is behind me. And they made 40 transfers, and that cost them a total of minus 20 points.
Well, I look at this now. This is a manager, I think, that made an immediate transfer every time they got a red arrow in the game week. They definitely had moments where they transferred out a player on a Friday evening or a Saturday morning, and then you'd watch that player score a goal or two over the weekend. So I think some of their transfer activities was a bit off and a bit skewed.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with Mick there. 40 transfers suggest someone who's fully committed to finding a marginal gain, but unfortunately, marginal gains occasionally become marginal pains in this business, and I think this manager might have felt some of the pain there.
Well, I can tell you for certain, without any doubt, I certainly feel the pain in this studio at times when the two of you are withering on at each other and even dragging Hector into this. We next have Blightsome Squad, who had 41 transfers, and that cost them minus 20 points.
And yet again, here we have another manager who believed every problem could be solved by opening up the transfer book. Sometimes football requires patience, and sometimes Blightsome Squad required 3 transfers before they had breakfast. They were transferring, and sometimes I don't think there was a lot of sense to their transfers. I haven't gone in depth to it. I haven't broken it down minutely team by team, but I think it was too easy for them there.
Lads, you've got to agree, this manager remained active and competitive. And that's what fantasy football is. It rewards involvement, and this manager was certainly involved.
Yes, they were certainly involved. Yeah, we won't argue with that. But there's involvement, and then there's repeatedly opening up the transfer book like it's a slot machine there.
What a Beauty 99 had a total of 16 transfers then, and they didn't lose any points.
Well, hold on. 16 transfers. 16.
Yeah, 16 transfers.
Yeah. Nobody could turn around and say that's transfer strategy. That's monk-like self-discipline. Most managers would have 16 transfers made by Halloween. And this is like what a Beauty 99's problem year in, year out is this idleness. They're like an engine ticking over. They need a good rev, or they need a good something, so they do. But, 16 transfers. Mick, what have you got to say about this?
Well, there's not much to say, about that. I think probably they're a little bit inactive there. They could do it, as you say, revving it up a little bit there.
And then we move on to Quinn's Heroes, and they made 35 transfers, and that didn't cost them any points whatsoever.
Okay, here we are, another member of the Responsible Adults Association. A manager like this, he must have had a look around at all the other transfer activity that was going on, the chaos that was surrounding them, and shook their heads wondering at that. But where did they end up on the table? That's the question that they have to answer, and they have to sleep with that.
I felt that sometimes this manager might have struggled a little bit, but they did show a balanced style of management. Were actively trying to improve their team, but there was still that discipline there. Enough of it to avoid unnecessary madness. That's what I see.
That's another manager you've called disciplined. I mean, are you actually reviewing these managers in this league this year, or are you looking for role models?
Yeah, I'm disciplined.
I don't know, Mick. I just don't know. Finally, anyway, we'll take a look at ASC Tulane. They had 25 transfers, and that hit them for -8 points. Eamon, what are we to say about this?
This is a manager who hits the transfer button, or the panic button, as we say, on special occasions. I describe this as a nice balance between extreme caution and complete emotional collapse. No engagement in this whatsoever there. It's just nonsense stuff. And this is another manager like What a Beauty 99. We've spoken about these guys previously. Issues. That's what I say. Issues.
Well, there you have it. Some managers treated transfers like a carefully considered strategic exercise. Others treated the transfer market like Black Friday sale.
Yeah, very good. I like that side. It's very good there.
Mick, I have to say, it's actually fascinating listening to you.
Oh, thanks very much.
Well, I don't know if it's going to come across as a compliment here, but I mean, listening to you, every manager who made a lot of transfers was ambitious. Every manager who made a few transfers was disciplined. Every manager who lost points was brave, and every manager who didn't lose points was wise.
Mick has somehow managed to declare every transfer strategy a success.
Lads, you're all never listening to me, but I'm always saying there are many paths to greatness.
Yes, and several of those paths involve losing 20 points along the way with your transfers.
Okay. Before we finish up, can we take a look at the World Cup? Of course, it kicked off there on the 11th of June with Mexico taking on South Africa, and each of the host countries have played there. America had a very good win for themselves there, and Canada had a draw. So we're looking at 104 games in total, so it's going to be wall-to-wall football with great shocks expected, dramatic penalty shootouts, and millions of people suddenly becoming football experts overnight. The only downside of this, of course, is once again we'll be watching it without Ireland taking part.
I think every World Cup I convince myself that Ireland are only one good qualifying campaign, and then reality arrives and you're hit by the bus there. I think I'm going to support Scotland this year. Mick?
Well, I always think there's a touch of sadness on Ireland there, because you still enjoy the football, but you're always imagining what would it be like to see Ireland involved there.
Then you're going to support Scotland, Eamon?
Yes, I think I'm going to support the Scots. Yeah.
Okay, and looking at the tournament itself, who were we expecting to impress?
For me, it's going to be France. Every tournament somebody says that they're too old or they're too young or they're in transition, and suddenly then they reach the semi-finals. They're like the fantasy football manager who keeps finishing in the top 3 while everyone else is trying to figure out how they manage to do that there. So I like the group that they're in, and I fancy them to get past Senegal, Iraq and Norway.
Mick, who do you fancy?
Well, I wouldn't rule out Spain. I think they're an excellent group of young players. They're technically superb there, and they play football the way football should be played. Yeah.
Mick, you say that about Spain in every tournament. I mean, at this point, you'd back Spain to win a game of tug of war.
Okay, what about the likes of Argentina then, lads?
Well, I expect them to be there or thereabouts. They're a team you can never write them off. They've got history there.
Now, don't forget either Brazil. I think Brazil could be very dangerous there. And maybe out there, Hector is somewhere preparing a 20-minute speech about why this will be their year.
Assuming that Hector has finished helping his uncle and hasn't become a mayor of some local village there as such.
And of course, we have to consider England are there. What do we think of their chances? Because every World Cup seems to begin with huge expectations for this team. And they're in Group L with Croatia, Ghana and Panama.
England, for me, are always fascinating. You would have to say that they stand a good chance of getting out of that group. And before every tournament, they can convince you that they can win. And then afterwards, they're looking for a new manager, or the public inquiry into how the 3 lions were taken down. It'll be interesting, though, their manager, how far they can go here. And I have expectations for them there. I fancy that they will at least get into the last 8.
I'll agree with Eamon on that. I think you have to fancy that they're going to do well. They've got quality players throughout, and they've got, there's genuine talent in the team there. And I think if things click for them, they'll go far in the tournament.
Yeah, I think that's true there. And look, the problem is England supporters, they've been hearing about this could be their year. This could be the year that they, win the World Cup. But look, we've been listening to that since colour television was invented. So it's time for them to push on and get going. They've done well in recent tournaments, but again, that last gasp. They're missing that bit there. And of course, Eamon, as you said, Scotland are there. So they're in Group C along with Brazil, Morocco and Haiti.
I think the Scotland, a nice team to watch them. Scots are great. They could be 4-0 down and still be having the time of their life there.
Yeah, well, look, I think if you're Scotland and you see Brazil is in your group, you're already circling second place. So I expect that, I don't think they're going to get too much. Look, I don't think Haiti or Morocco are going to do too much there. Well, yeah, you'd expect that Brazil are going to be the favourites there for the top spot. But is it fair to say, Morocco has impressed recently and Haiti would never underestimate them? So what you're saying, host, is that in your view, that Scotland have one giant mountain to climb and 2 steep hills. Yeah, but can they get through? Well, yeah, I think so. Mick?
Oh, I agree. I genuinely think so. And Morocco, could be difficult, but Scotland they are a competitive side, so they are. So I think if they take the points from Morocco and do the business against Haiti, qualification is a certainty for them.
And this World Cup, of course, as I said earlier, is being hosted by Mexico, the United States and Canada there. So there's probably a reasonable chance that Donald Trump might appear at one of the matches here. I would fully expect Donald to appear on TV at some stage, and it'll probably be during a goalless draw between 2 nations that he's never heard of. That's when we'll see him there. Could you imagine, lads, trying to explain the offside rule to him? Yeah, well, look, I wouldn't waste my time.
If you were trying to do that, before we'd all be arguing about the size of the footballs and VAR and who should be selected to play there.
Indeed. Okay, on that note, I think we should wrap things up. Thank you, Eamon. You're always capable of turning any discussion into a potential public inquiry. And you, Mick, the only person I know who can look at a manager losing 56 points in transfer hits and still describe it as an ambitious, strategic journey. You find the positive where nobody else can find a pulse.
Like I always say, there are many paths to greatness.
As I said before, most of them don't involve 50 transfers. Thanks for that. Well, it's been a pleasure, as I said, and our listeners are probably sitting there wondering. One of you provides skepticism while the other provides optimism, and somehow between the two of you, we still manage to produce a show. So thanks very much for that. Most importantly, of course, I'd like to thank you, our listeners there, who are continuing to join us, to download, stream, and to support the show. We hope that you've enjoyed listening to us today, and if you'd like to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you, and you can contact us through all the usual channels there. So, from myself, Captain Fantastical Mick and Eamon, enjoy the rest of the day. Look after yourselves. From all of us here, so long.